Good morning, everyone. Uh, so today with us we have our resource person, Sri Amarpreet Singh, Head of Strategy and Business Development, Daily Temp, Bengaluru. Uh, and his topic would be systematic waste management for apartment complexes and societies. We'll just start with his brief introduction. Coming to his educational qualification, he has done his B Civil Engineering from Thapar University, Patiala, followed by he has done some training on Common Purpose and American Express, New Delhi, from American Express Leadership Academy in the year 2016, and then followed by Social Entrepreneurship Program from in the year 2018 from INSEAD Business School, Singapore. Coming to his professional experience, currently is working as Head of Strategy and Business Development, Daily Dump, Compost at Home, Bengaluru, from June 2015 till present. He works on forecasting, planning, and managing the organization's sales goals, building strong business partner and customer relationships, and negotiating larger contracts, making sure that the organization is very customer focused and all the clients are served with distinction, strengthening the organization by conducting team trainings and measuring performance, making sure the team develops the necessary skills and competencies as per their individual development plans, creating and experimenting with new strategies and partnerships for the growth of the organization, work with functional leaders for functional strategic planning, including establishing and managing budgets for one or more departments in the immediate organization, managing the partners and keeping a track of their performance and engagement. He has also done a fellowship, which is called Gandhi Fellowship from Rajasthan, India. One sec. From June 2014 till May 2015, he has worked with 5 rural government school headmasters from Junjunu, Rajasthan. It's a place in Rajasthan, to create strategies for improving the overall conditions of the schools. He has created new libraries in all the 5 schools. He has participated in the Design for Change campaign and got kids in one of the schools to revamp an old playground and turn it into something usable. He has worked on the basic learning abilities of the school children and measured the children's progress through baseline and end line test mechanisms. Yeah, I guess it's a brief biodata about today's speaker, Mr. Amarpreet Singh. So I just want to thank Mr. Amarpreet Singh for accepting our invitation and delivering a talk on this topic today as the first session. Thank you, sir.
No problems.
Yeah. And followed by your talks are now, and this virtual stage is all yours now. What you can do, you can share your screen. I have made you co-host. You can share your screen and start the talks.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and good morning to everybody. I hope my voice is clear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's clear.
Sure. And if at any point there's any disturbance or anything, you can just maybe put it in the chat window or let me know, and I can stop and.
Fine, sir. Fine.
Okay, so it's great to be doing this, and it's awesome that you guys are focusing so much on systemic waste management and sustainable practices, which is the more than just a need of the hour. When we look at climate change and what's happening with our resources, it's very, very important that we focus on these topics. Just before I start my brief presentation, just to add to the introduction that Sir gave, So we are Daily Dump. We are an organization based out of Bangalore, and we've been around for 15 years now. Actually, it was started in 2006. And one of our goals is how do we use design as a tool to enable behavior change? Because what happens is one big aspect of waste management and getting people to rethink about their waste and rethink about how they're wasting and how the waste can be utilized, recycled, reused, and so on. One of the very key aspects is behavior change, and how can we, as organizations and as institutions, kind of help to propagate that. And since 2006, we've actually grown to be present across the country now. We're there in about 20 different cities. And one of the primary things that we do is design composting solutions that help individual homes as well as societies to compost their kitchen waste at home. And there are various reasons why we do it, which I'll come to in the presentation. But since it's about systemic waste management in apartment complexes and housing societies, what I want to say is that before we get to an apartment complex or a community where lots of people are staying together, we'll talk a little bit about the home itself, on what can be done at an individual home level and what kind of education can be given to people who are staying in larger societies, and then come to what as a society we can do to have better waste management practices in place. And I would encourage anyone that at any point of time, if you have a question, please put it in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer. And if I'm able to answer it at that point, I can do that, or I can do it at the end of the session as well. So just to begin with my first presentation. I hope my presentation is seen.
Yes, sir.
Second. Okay, I hope you can see it in the big screen of picture of a lady holding a bag.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So whenever we do any kind of sessions anywhere, we first want to talk about the individual. Who is creating this waste in the cities, and why is this problem propagating? So the first question that comes to mind is, we show this picture and we say, okay, what is the lady doing? So invariably the answer is she's holding a bag of garbage, because this black color bag, we've come to a point where we know that if this is a black bag that someone is putting outside their home, it's full of garbage, it's full of material which is useless according to us. And also the expression on her face, she seems very pleased. That the house is clean and now I can keep my waste happily outside the house, and everything inside my house is great. Because we as people relate to having clean surroundings and inside our own homes, and we want a space that is ours, and we want a space that is clean in that sense. But our big question is, by doing this activity, does it help keep her own home clean? And then we come to this picture. Now, when so many thousands and lakhs and crores of people in our Indian cities, and when I say cities, I'm right now focusing on larger urban places, say cities like Bangalore itself, or Chennai, or Delhi, where the density of population is huge and there's way too many people living in apartment societies. When lots of people actually mix their waste and put it into these bags and send outside, this is what happens. And these are very common sites in neighborhoods. You can call them black spots, you can call them dump yards. But these are spaces where all of this waste kind of ends up reaching. And some of these bags actually are bags from people's homes. And that's a very big realization when it comes to our behavior with waste, to realize that what I'm doing at home is actually possibly causing a problem outside. Now, where does the solution start? How do we start looking at it differently as people and as families, or people who want a clean surrounding? We first of all have to stop looking at it like waste. We have to say that this is a bag not full of waste, but a bag full of possibility, a bag full of resources. For example, when we did our research, when we were trying to find out solutions to different kinds of waste problems, we figured that 60% of your waste is actually organic waste. And by organic waste, we mean food waste, waste that comes from your kitchen, which could be cut vegetables, fruits, peels, leftover food, all kinds of stuff which is full of nutrition, which was grown in a farm somewhere, came to your table, we had the food, and then something was left. And then immediately when you leave that food from your plate, you start thinking of it like it's absolutely waste. It's of no use at all, and you basically dump it. That is 60% of waste. And in terms of numbers, if I say a city like Bangalore produces 5 to 6 thousand tons of waste, on a daily basis. Imagine 60% of that is a huge amount of food waste that a city produces on a daily basis. Then you have another small category, 20%, which is recyclable waste, which is the kind of waste that, say, you've ordered something from Amazon and it comes in a cardboard packaging, or you've ordered some sort of food material which has come in a plastic box wrapped around with paper. Now, typically, all these things, glass, paper, cardboard, packaging, come under recyclable waste because that material can then be reused to make other things. It could be transformed into some other form that could be useful in a different sort of context. And then you have small two categories. There's a 10% toxic waste, the red one, which is basically your waste like your medical waste. It could be wasted e-waste as well, which includes your mobile phones or wires and chargers and stuff like that, because those things can be toxic. They're full of materials which could be harmful for people who work with them. And hence e-waste, it's very important to know that there are only specific places where it needs to go. And the last 10% is reject waste, which is something that is of no use to anyone. But then coming back to the individual, now, people usually, it's a very common rhetoric, and we also speak as an organization with our customers. Say most of you guys, you work in an institution, and then you have so much to do during the day, and then you go back home. The most common question is, but what else can I do? The best I can do is I stop wasting my resources. I will not mix them. I'll put them separately. But does that really solve the problem? Can one person who does it really solve a problem? So those are normal questions that come to a person's mind when we think of the solution to these problems. But this is what you can do. And like I was explaining before, this is a visual representation of that. You have to treat each category completely differently. 60%, like I said, is completely food waste. So you need to realize that, hey, this is not waste. This is something which could be used for X, Y, or Z purpose. Same goes for the second category. As you can see, recyclable waste has so many plastic wrappers, bottles, old pens, old jars, milk packets, which are actually very useful. And then the third one, which is toxic waste, which you can see is basically all the stuff that needs to be disposed safely. You can see computers in it, a washing machine, you can see a syringe, batteries, all those things which are basically toxic. And then finally, the fourth category you see is landfill waste or reject waste, we call it. It's something that is of no use to anyone, which needs to either go to a landfill in places where you don't have other facilities, but there are places where you can also burn them in a controlled environment. You can incinerate them, as to be more technical, and deal with the waste. It includes sanitary pads also as a major component of the reject waste, which is produced from societies. Now, let's come to each category. And this was, again, we're talking about the individual home level interventions that a person can do at home to be more mindful about waste management. So first thing is, as you can see on the right, there's a picture of a box of spices. Now, we don't mix spices when we cook food. And that's something, it's a wonderful example to tell people that if you're not mixing spices because the taste goes bad, the same goes for the waste that you produce. If you mix two different kinds of things, it's not going to be of any use. If you mix plastic with food waste, it's of no use to anyone, because then sometimes the plastic cannot be separated from it in large volumes, and hence composting becomes difficult, and hence recycling becomes difficult. So one very important thing to do at home is you take a separate container for your food waste. You keep it close to where you are cooking food. Say in your kitchen, you have like a small steel dabba, an old one that you may be using, or you have a small plastic container or any kind of other packaging that you can reuse. Keep it in your kitchen at one corner and put all your food scraps. So whenever you're cooking, any peels or any leftover food over there, and then you compost it or do whatever you have chosen to do after that with the food waste. And next is uh, don't be lazy. It's always good to have different bins at home for different things. So even if you have two different materials that you say you've ordered food, or you have some kind of material which is a mix of two things, make sure you are taking the effort to put different things in the bins that you have assigned. So you have to, like in this picture, the gentleman is working on the computer, and this is a very common thing these days. In fact, we're doing it right now. So he's having a banana peel, and he's just randomly throwing it in a dustbin which is very close to him. So completely needs to be avoided. That dustbin, as you can see, is just meant for paper, and the food needs to go to a different one. And similarly, we should tell everybody at home to follow these principles. And then adjust Madi. So one of the big aspects of waste management when we talk to our customers is not only to look for new things to manage your waste better, but how can you reuse your existing things that you have at home? So if you look around and see that there are things you're not utilizing anymore, say it could be old packaging or an old bucket that is lying vacant and not being used, cardboard boxes. Now, all those things could be used as containers for your waste. So instead of buying new items, or they could be reused for some other purpose also. So a lot of waste management is about being mindful of what is it that I have in my life, what are the materials that surround me in my home, and how I can utilize them to the fullest. Then comes the toxic and hazardous waste. Like I was telling before, say your electronic waste. Now that needs to be recycled by the correct agencies. For example, there is e-Parisara in Bangalore, which does e-waste recycling. So we need to have that knowledge that there are some kinds of waste which are very, very hazardous for humans who work with it. So if e-waste was to go to a local market and people with bare hands were to open your laptops and your phones, it's not the wisest thing to do. It in fact goes to a place where people are experts in doing that, and they take it out and they know what elements go into these products, and they can separate them out. Similarly, you could say it about chemical products that may be there, or medicines and other kinds of medical waste that you have at home. For all of these things, there are correct agencies. And as housing societies and apartments, we need to be aware of these agencies and need to reach out to them for, dealing with this kind of things. Instead of putting it all together and actually giving it out and creating a mess. And then this is the last category of waste, which is your reject waste, which like you can see, there's when we sweep the floor, the sweeping that you collect could carry infectious materials, and hence it is a part of reject waste. So there's even some bits of soiled plastic, for example. Yes, soiled plastic, for example. And soiled plastic would be, say, if you go out and buy like a sambar packet from somewhere, it usually comes in a very thin layer of plastic packaging, which even after you eat the thing, it's not really possible to use it because it's so it becomes so smushy with the whole liquid in it. So and hence you can't really recycle it. And there are other and it also needs a slightly larger amount of knowledge of different kinds of packaging. For example, some chips packets, when you have potato chips, some of them have a aluminium and plastic packaging fused together to create one layer of packaging. Again, it is very, very difficult to separate those two materials and reuse them. So even having the little bits of knowledge of what is that material and whether it is a reject waste or is it a recyclable waste also helps to make these decisions. And there you have it. So just by encouraging our and this could be done in various ways. Like in housing societies, we could do it as trainings. We could do it as a fun session for the society. We could there's multiple ways to kind of impart this knowledge. But the most important thing is if everybody in the society realizes that what I'm throwing out is actually not waste. It's a bag full of resources. It's a bag full of things that can be reused and used in various different forms, and it just doesn't have to go to a landfill. You can actually save on so much waste. You can see in the picture from left to right, there's so much difference. In the picture with the plastic bag, there's all kinds of waste put together and going out. Now imagine lakhs of people just doing that, as opposed to lakhs of people actually separating all those kinds of waste separately, and then only giving out the reject waste, which is the waste that actually has to go to a landfill. So the difference is huge, and you can actually reduce the amount of waste that a city produces by making sure people follow uh, these principles. Now, as you can see, there's another person now, since we were talking about the individual, where it says, you're no longer contributing. So there's a nice halo on her head saying, if we do, there's no reason to believe that if I don't make this change, nothing's going to happen. So we should always be mindful of the waste that we're producing, especially as societies, as gated communities, so that we can, make sure that the stuff leaving the house is in a very usable form. It's in a form that can easily be recycled or reused. So this was about an individual and what you can do at home. But since we are focusing on our community level, I hope my second this thing is visible. The second presentation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now let's talk about communities, because we live in cities which are growing vertically. At one point, centralization of systems was considered as a good way to go. That means that all your waste in the city would be collected from different regions and pockets and wards, and it will be taken to one central area where it will be treated. But as we have seen, say let's take the example of Bangalore, the city that has grown twice its size in almost two times in 20 or 25 years. The number of people has just become a lot. So that whole centralization does not work anymore. You can't be collecting waste from so many different places and taking it to one central spot. There needs to be some level of decentralization that is done. Sorry. So a lot of decentralization that needs to be done around waste management. So what are we doing in each ward? What are we doing in each locality or in each nagar? So those are things which are important in mind. But if I'm looking at for a waste management solution for my own community, the first thing I need to check according to us is what size of a community do I fall under? Am I a small with around 4 to 30 homes, or am I a medium up to 200 homes? We categorize large as something up to 400 homes, and beyond that, we say it's a huge community with lots of flats up to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 homes in one community itself. Now, if you are a gated community, if you're an apartment complex or a society, there are these 5 different things that need to be there for you to manage your waste better. First one being segregation at source. And as we had discussed in the previous PPT itself, everybody should be on board that, yes, we will divide our waste into different categories at home and give it out. If that doesn't happen, unfortunately, no waste management system works for the community. It might work for some time, but it is just not sustainable, because the amount of cost to actually separate those materials later on and to take them separately to different locations is going to overpower any kind of efforts that are being made to kind of use that material. It's too costly. So if the segregation is done at source, it becomes so much more easier to actually manage your waste. Second thing as a society that you need to have is some space for installing waste management systems. For example, for your kitchen waste, what we also do at Daily Dump is help people set up composting solutions, which is our primary forte. We've been designing them for so long. Now, any kind of composting would require space naturally. It's not like a compact machine where you put everything in and just disappears. It can't. It has to follow a nature's cycle of decomposing. So you need to have some space in mind in your community that, okay, this little space we will give to composting of waste. We'll make like a dry waste collection thing over there. We'll also have electronic waste collection put separately. So space allocation is important. And if you're not allocating enough space for waste collection and management, then again, it will be a problem. Third thing is budget. Another thing about waste is, lots of societies feel that, their waste should be handled almost for free. Again, that just does not work. There always needs to be some budget when you're say on a monthly basis, for doing the right thing, taking your waste all together in one vehicle and going and dumping it in a lake is not the right thing. And that's probably one of the cheapest things to do. But if you allocate some amount of budget and do things the right way, which is you compost your waste, you make sure you have the right agency which is set up for your electronic and your medical waste, and you also ensure that your uh, dry waste is going to the dry waste collection center where it's being, the usefulness of those materials is being recognized, then only you're managing your waste well as a society or as an apartment complex. But if your goal is just to give your waste outside and forget about it, then that's not the right approach to managing your waste. And then the fourth thing is you need to have housekeeping allocated for this job. Sometimes they see large communities where they collect the waste, it's segregated, it's kept separately, but they just don't have the manpower to deal with that much volume. And hence, at the last stage of waste management, where things have to be composted properly or they have to be put into separate recycling bins, that's where it fails because the people are not able to manage the work. So make sure a part of your budget is also who's going to manage it, and whether your housekeeping is trained enough or whether they need more training. Then there are organizations like us that actually help to impart those trainings to people to be able to do that. Fifth thing, and we find it a very, very important thing, is champions that manage. Now, we define champions as people in the community who take up this task of making sure the community does the right form of waste management in its practice and in its execution. Those people are very, very important, because although you might have started some sort of segregation conversation, you might have a space for installing things, you might have a housekeeping which is there to help out. But if you don't have citizens who are aware and who are really driven to do this, we've seen sometimes things fall through the crack. So it's very important that in your societies, you have a group of people who form, say, a team together, or you have three people who are really driven by it, and they kind of see through the fact that the systems are working as they're supposed to. That really, all these five things together really make a society that is very driven and very up for managing the waste better. And then, what do organizations like us help with? So what we do is we do a lot of advising on setting up your segregation and collection systems, how your waste should be collected and where your different categories of waste should go. And then we do training and we do installations of composting and sharing of best practices and all that. Now, some advices on the first steps. Now, one very important thing now that we sometimes forget is that when we're living in an apartment community or any kind of gated community, we're actually living in a community. So sometimes we need to have community-driven things that encourage other members of the community to start doing it. Sometimes just messaging is not enough, or just a meeting is not enough. We have to go the extra step to encourage people to do things. For example, in these photos, these are actual photos from apartment complexes around Bangalore, where children were actually given the task to get the communities manage their waste better. So children went door to door. There was lots of knowledge imparting, and when you have, and you could call them something nice, like a waste police of the apartment or something like that, and they would go from door to door and tell people that you need to segregate like this, and this is why it is important. And it creates a very high impact, and it kind of brings the community together. It's fun. It's something that everybody enjoys as well as understands the importance of. And this kind of participation from various members of the community is very important. And what also happens is when all of the people come together and do a system of waste management, it kind of adds to the cohesiveness of the community, and they kind of feel that this is their own solution that they have come up with. And they feel a lot more ownership. If the work is just given to somebody from outside to come and do waste management, you feel very disconnected. You don't know what's going on. It's not encouraging you to then manage your waste better at home. So both need to happen for the waste to be managed. And then it's important to know how others have done it. So you can see various images here. For example, there's an image from an apartment where long time back they did this red bucket and green bucket, which has become very popular now. So color sort of demarcation where you're giving all these things to the people who live in the apartments and saying, you put your food waste into the green, you put your reject waste into the red, you put your dry waste into a separate container, and you give it separate. But we do understand that every community may have a context. There are communities which are very widespread. There are communities with like a huge tower of apartments. So you can decide what works better for your staff also to work with. There's another community where what they did is they just took these steel containers and they gave those for a collection of wet waste, because people were feeling that, oh, if I put my wet waste without a plastic lining into a plastic bucket, it's going to smell and it's going to be difficult to clean. Hence, they came up with a solution that, okay, you use steel containers. So it's a very simple intervention, but it's very important to do something like that. And having an electronic waste collection big sort of a bin sitting in your basement or in any other decided place in the community where people can come and put their electronic waste is also very important. Again, as you see, sometimes what happens is communities decide that we want to do waste management. People are also very driven. Segregation is also done, but we just don't enable our staff to have the right resources to be able to do that, and that's very important. We want our housekeeping staff to be happy doing the job. We want them to be comfortable doing it. We want them to be safe while doing it. As you can see in the first picture on the left, someone has segregated their waste, or maybe not segregated, and put it all together in a bag, and the person is actually carrying it with hands through the stairs. So that's a big no-no. If someone does that job for 7 days, they're already discouraged to do more. They already don't want to do this, and they just take the waste and put it somewhere. But if you make like some nice trolleys that help the staff to go from one house to the other, and those also designed in a way that suits your community. So if you're a very vertical community, make sure you design something that fits easily into a list. But if you're a well spread out community, make sure you design something that's easily rollable and can go from one spot to the other. The idea is to make every step of waste collection, segregation, collection, and waste management as easy for the staff as possible. And now there are various pickup routines that we feel really work. And we divide them into 2 or 3 different categories. The one being daily pickup. Now, what are the kinds of waste that should be picked up daily? Definitely the wet waste, which is your food waste or kitchen waste, and definitely your rejects and sanitary waste, because the medical waste cannot lie around for too long. So for your sanitary waste, you can have a correct agency which is picking up your sanitary waste and other forms of reject waste. For your kitchen waste, when it is collected every day, you can have a mechanism where you are actually composting. Now, how you are composting, it would depend on your size of a community, what kind of place you have, and what kind of process you want to follow. And you can then decide which is the best method for you. So these 2 things are done on a daily basis. Second is the weekly thing where you're giving your dry waste outside. Now, dry waste is a very complicated thing. Why? Because of, and when I say it's a complicated thing, I mean the supply chain of it. So when you are giving out the dry waste, it is collected from each door. It is taken out by people who are experts in dry waste collection. So there's a huge stream throughout the economy that flows. There are some materials that are sent to a local dry waste collection center. Some materials might be lying at a kabadi wala shop who will be probably selling it to another client. The dry waste collection center will then give cardboard separately somewhere. They'll give milk packets separately somewhere. So everything has a different destination after that. The plastics are taken separately to be remolded and reused in a different form. But from your community, a weekly once collection of dry waste is enough for it to be segregated. Then we have the monthly collection. Monthly collection could be for electronic waste because you don't generate that much. Only in a month, a community might be able to generate enough to afford a pickup, because even the pickups are cost, right? So there has to be some sort of transportation. And there are some tips that we have. First is make sure your sanitary waste is always collected in newspaper parcels. And it's not put into one deep plastic bag where you can't see it. It should be very clear that it's sanitary waste because people are going to be handling it. So it's a health hazard for people who are going to manage. And in the community itself, let's try to like in a city level, we are trying to decentralize waste management. Even in a community, we should try that. Say if your community has different blocks, make sure each block has a separate composting or a dry waste collection and things like that. That just makes things easy for the staff as well. And then when you're giving out e-waste, your bulbs and your tube lights, make sure they are protected from breaking, and they're stored in a way that everybody knows it doesn't break on the way out when the collection happens. And even your old furniture and clothes could be given to either to a charity, or even in communities we have seen that people do a lot of barter. Those things should also be encouraged in communities where if someone doesn't use a table, instead of throwing it, can you find other people who might use it in the community and you can get something else. So a very shared sort of understanding of materials and use and giving it to different people in the community should be encouraged. And then we come to another important aspect in communities, which is your garden waste, because many communities have either a flourishing garden, or if not, sometimes you just have a bunch of trees lined up on the side. And people who live in such communities will tell you that the amount of cost which is spent actually on picking up garden waste, sometimes in trolleys, is quite high. You have to very occasionally, get people to kind of come and pick it up. So garden waste should be a daily routine. The gardener should collect all the leaf litter which is, generated in the garden. Also, collecting other kinds of cuttings and trimmings and branches and stuff like that. Now, those things can be taken together, and you can actually compost garden waste as well. And it's not something that you ideally need to send out in a truck or in a trolley, because also a lot of garden waste is actually burnt in the cities, which is not the best practice. In fact, it's very carcinogenic, and it's it could be really harmful. So we have to collect the garden waste, and we can use leaf composters, which is like open sort of structures. In the picture, actually, right next to the tree, you can see two different shapes of a leaf composter where you can put all the garden waste. You can put like a microbial culture. You can water it often, and after a few months, it turns into compost, and you can remove the compost from the bottom. And one optional thing is that you can, if you find that you have very huge trees with like big branches that get cut off very often, then you can use a shredder also in those kind of situations, so that anything which is very hard and big can actually be cut down into smaller sort of pieces. And even garden waste, like I was saying, decentralization is the mantra for everything. Even for garden waste, if you have like a large space, green space in the community, make sure your leaf composting is also decentralized. You have some on one end of the community and some on the other end of the community, so that it's easy for the staff to collect the dried leaves and put it into the leaf composter. And now we come to composting. Now this is what we specialize in at Daily Dump, and we get people to do. Now again, based on the size of the community, you can decide what kind of composting works for you. Now there are various kinds available. You can do leave-it pot kind of row composting, which is done in terracotta pots. And actually, one of our old products, it's called a Khamba terracotta composter, is the oldest home composting product in the country, where it's designed to keep it in homes and balconies. But for slightly for bigger communities, say 5 or 10 homes, you can also do large terracotta pots, which are called leave-it pots, and you can use those, and you can put your daily kitchen waste into it along with a remix powder, and keep doing that. When one is full, then you fill the second and third, and by the time you come back to the first one, it's ready with the compost. And in fact, about composting, we can discuss a little more. I'll show you a few more slides in the next PPT. But these are the various methods. And next to it, there's an AGA composting. The AGA is a product which is actually helping hundreds of communities to compost in the country, which is installed for a slightly larger number of homes. Similarly, we used to have another Manthan, and then people also do pulverization or aerobic composting in machines, which we don't do, but there are several companies that help communities to do that. So based on the size of your community and what kind of space you have allocated, you can choose a product which works for you for making the compost. Yeah, so that those were the steps that enable a community to manage their waste better. If we do a quick recap, what we need to ensure, just to mention again, the 5 main points that we need for any community to manage better. You need segregation, you need space, you need budget, training of housekeeping, and people who can help manage. If these 5 things are, made sure of, the next things, whatever we saw, are completely possible to do. I mean, they're very easily implementable, but we need these things to be put into place first, and then move on to the next part of it. So what I'll do now is I'll just share my last PPT. Just give me a second. I hope you can see my next presentation also.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I should have shown this actually the beginning of the thing. So this is a brief introduction of our organization itself, Daily Dump, and as you can see, we've designed about lots of different composting solutions for people, and it's happening across 17 cities. And we work with local potters actually to help to make a lot of our products. Now, so far we've spoken of, since we had to speak about systemic waste management in communities, we've spoken of, one, the role of the individual, on why every family and every person in a community needs to be told about waste management. And if that piece is missed, it doesn't become sustainable. The knowledge is not transferred, then we're just doing something very mechanically, and it's not passing on to the people who are staying there. Second is how we discussed how a community can be made more robust, and what are the interventions that can be done at the community level to, one, encourage people to participate, second, to encourage housekeeping to do the jobs better, third, making it very easy and decentralized to manage waste over there. Now we come to the small part of it called for composting, and what we and I'll just run you through a quick presentation on why should I compost. I mean, that's the basic question we would want to answer in this. And why I put this question like this is because this is the main question that comes from customers and communities. When we reach out to people and say, hey, you should compost, you should manage your waste better, one basic answer is, but why should I do it? I'm already paying my taxes and my waste should be picked up and dealt with. So we'd like to explore that a little bit. So one of the first things we say is, okay, if you look at a banana peel, how would I describe this? And most people answer saying, this is a banana peel, this is waste. This needs to be thrown, or this needs to go out into the bin. Some might say, oh, this can be composted. But what we want people to also explore is, and maybe it's like an exercise, you can do it for different materials today when you go back from the session also, is to look at a material and say, what are the 5 things about this that I don't know, that are completely alien to me? I know it's a banana peel, but what are the important parts of it? It's a, like, what comes to my mind is it's one of the wonderful designs by nature of a protective packaging. The way it actually handles the banana fruit inside, it's just remarkable on how perfect nature can be. Second, banana peels are actually food in many cultures. Not all cultures actually remove the peel and eat the banana. Thirdly, they're used in skincare products, which is also very say a very important application of the banana peel itself. And when you look at these different aspects of a particular material, the whole thinking around it starts changing. You start appreciating the material a little more. You're saying, hey, this is not just a peel, it's actually helping out in various forms. And of course the last is, a banana peel is full of nutrition. It's full of very, very important things that can go back to the soil, and hence it makes so much more sense to actually make it into compost or put it back into the soil in one form or the other. So now, since we took an example of banana peel, I encourage everyone that today, whenever you find any material close to you, you can, take a phone, or you can say take like a plastic cup or anything, and think about the material, saying what are the things that we don't know about this, and you can explore a lot more. But when you look at your kitchen waste and you try to explore that a little more, you will find there are many things around kitchen waste also that people don't know. Just to name a few, number one is kitchen waste. Like I said in the previous presentation, is 60% of the waste produced in the country, and that's huge. That basically means all the cities in the country are producing more than half of the waste being produced is just full of nutrition. It's a wonderful thing. It's a thing that needs to go back to the soil. Second thing is kitchen waste, when it mixes with plastic waste, it becomes completely non-useful. When it goes to a landfill and there's waste mixed together and put, many people say that, hey, but it's going to get composted in the landfill, right? But that's not true. It actually ends up generating greenhouse gases because it's mixing with toxic material, and it creates leachate that goes into the groundwater and pollutes it. Third thing is a lot of livelihood revolves around kitchen waste. If you actually keep your kitchen waste separate from your dry waste, the amount of money local communities can make from the dry waste or from your segregated reusable or recyclable waste increases quite a lot. So by segregating kitchen waste, you're actually helping a community which you might not be seeing every day, but they are the ones who are dealing with dry waste on a daily basis. Fourth thing is with the collection of, like I said before, with the collection of lots of kitchen waste, if it is all put together in big landfills where there's anaerobic conditions that develop, a lot of leachate flows into the ground, and it's very toxic. Fifth thing is kitchen waste can actually be converted into compost. Now, there could be many more things. This is just to name, say, 5 things. But if you start looking at what's in your waste, you can find different ways to, look at things. But this exercise really helps to rethink on how you are imagining your waste to be. Now, composting at home makes complete sense. It's a very simple process of, say, the nitrogen in your waste, and you give it a carbon source. So, say you take like many people use stuff like cocoa peat or full of bacterial cultures, and in the presence of oxygen. So that's why they do composting in balconies in apartments, or if you're doing it as a society, you do it in a larger scale somewhere outside. And you, in the presence of moisture, it finally forms your compost and makes some amount of heat and CO2 and some amount of leachate. But then there are lots of myths around composting. People will say, hey, composting is going to smell really bad. Like if you do it in our community, it's just going to be smelling of waste all around. Not true. If it is done in the correct form, if you're adding the right amount of carbon, the right amount of cocoa peat and different materials, you are actually, nothing will smell. It will actually be a very healthy process in that sense. Another thing is people say, oh, composting is just, if I try it, I'm just going to be spending all my time doing that. Not going to happen. Again, not true. At home, composting only takes about 2.5 minutes of your time. Doing it as a community, it might take only about half an hour to 1 hour of the staff's time on a daily basis. So it's not going to consume all the time that people are spending on it. Third thing is people think that it's going to be so expensive that we can't afford it. Again, when people install composting solutions at home or as a community, the rough cost that it comes to is about 2,000 to 3,000 rupees per family. And I'm just saying it in a very approximate sort of way. It doesn't become more than that. You can make it lesser than that, of course. So 2,000 to 3,000 rupees for the amount of impact composting has, is we feel it's very justified as a cost of putting a material which is sustainable, which is going to run for a long time. And then Some people feel, oh, composting is unhealthy. It's going to ruin my family's health. Completely false. It's actually the opposite of that. It's very healthy. There is no problems related to human health when you compost at home in a small way. Now, you of course you can't compare it to a large composting facility where tons of waste being composted. There you have to follow different safety sort of measures. But those don't apply to a simple composting apparatus in your house or in your community. Then another myth is, oh, if I do composting in the community, there's going to be bugs and flies and everything all around. Yes, composting is a natural process. You will always find some sort of small bugs or maggots inside the compost, but your community is not going to get filled up with them. You will probably find them in the pile where you are composting. And the bugs in composting are all the good ones. They're not harmful. They're actually aiding in the process. And when the final compost is formed, most of them have already done their job and left pretty much. And last thing is, people feel if I compost in my community, it will only work if there's a garden, if we have use for it. That is again not true. I mean, composting is a waste management best practice. It is something that needs to be adopted across communities and across apartment complexes, irrespective of how big or small a garden you have. Compost can be given to a local park. It can be there's lots of organic farming movements coming up. There's lots of landscaping happening in the cities. The applications are huge, and the demand is also there. And in fact, say in Bangalore, what we do as an organization is we actually buy back the compost from people who are composting as communities, and then we try to give it further, because we don't want that a lack of a garden is a reason for someone to stop composting. So it's completely smell-free and foolproof methods. It's not something that's very nascent that just started yesterday. Composting has been around since we made the first home composter in 2006. We ourselves have spent 15 years in perfecting the design and making it better. So it's very convenient now, and convenience is very important for urban spaces and apartment complexes where people are actually wanting that a system be used very easily, and it should be fun, and it should not look bad as well. Some points on what can go into composting: you can put peel, seeds, cooked food, even tea and coffee, dried flowers, uncoated paper, meat and bones. So pretty much every kind of food item that you can think of, you can put it into a composting process. What you can't put is, say, a coconut shell, which is going to be very hard to compost or needs to be kept out. You cannot put stuff like plastic. Newspaper should be avoided because newspaper has ink on it, and it could generate some lead which goes into your compost, which is not the best thing. Similarly, other things are very self-explanatory. You can't put packaging, things like cigarette butts and batteries and stuff like that, because they won't decompose. So how does composting happen? These are pictures from an individual home composter that we give in a terracotta thing. So you can see from the top there's waste which is put every day. You cover it with a layer of cocoa peat powder. We call it the remix powder. It has bacterial cultures mixed in it. After about 3 weeks' time, this is what it becomes. Some things are decomposing and becoming like a dark soil sort of a texture, and some things are still in the process of becoming compost. And another week passes, and this is what it starts looking like. We see those tiny little maggots in it, and the compost getting formed. And finally, this is what you get as the final compost that is produced. You can take it out, put it in a different container, and you can start using it in the garden. And there's tons of people who are already composting in their homes, in their communities, and they're doing it all across India. And these things are available all across the internet as well. And just one of the last things I'll mention is there are different shapes and sizes when it comes to composting. And the reason I'm actually focusing on composting today is two things. One is, daily now we are a composting company. Second, it can actually deal with 60% of the waste, like I mentioned in the previous presentation, that we generate in our communities. So you can see from left to right, there are various shapes and sizes and forms of composting solutions available. There are some made out of terracotta. This one, the yellow one where the lady and the gentleman are standing, is called a gobble max, which is used for small communities or for eateries, restaurants, hotels, and stuff like that. The one on the extreme right, the green one, was the AGA one that we were talking in the previous presentation, which is used in large apartment complexes or housing societies, and can be installed centrally at any point in the community. And there are solo kits and all also available. So with this presentation, I just wanted to briefly touch upon what composting is, and I think you guys will have another session on composting today. There's a question of can we do any videos of this thing? Of course, I can find maybe a video quickly.
And why black bags to be avoided? Again, you can say again.
Sorry, sir.
Why black plastic bags to be avoided for carrying waste?
Okay. So black bags are what we feel the problem is. Anything that hides something becomes an issue. So when we are collecting waste from homes in a community, first of all, think of it this way. So if there are 100 apartments in a community, and if you encourage people to use the black plastic bags, you're actually encouraging 100 more plastic bags to be produced on a daily basis, which translates to 3,000 that you're producing on a monthly basis. So that itself becomes a lot to kind of go ahead and recycle. Secondly, when you have black colored bags, where you can't see anything inside, the tendency of people to put mixed waste in it becomes a lot more from our experience. And hence what we tell communities is that you completely avoid using plastic for holding the waste. If you're collecting the kitchen waste, it could be transferred from bins in the homes directly into larger containers which people are carrying in trolleys, and hence the food waste thing is solved. The plastic waste can also, or the dry waste can also be collected in a similar way once a week, where people go from door to door and collect the dry waste and transfer it directly to a bigger bin, which is then taken to the basement or wherever you are collecting it. So those are the reasons why we encourage people to not use the black colored garbage bags.
Yeah, exactly right, sir. What you said is right. So that you can reduce the usage of this plastic, especially the carry bags.
Yes.
Yes, you are exactly right. I think it was a nice presentation. I think we will invite you to guide our students in the college, in the community.
Absolutely, sir. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It was very nice presentation with all those pictures.
Yes.
Okay, very nice, sir. And I want to ask you, told about remix powder.
Yes.
Is it available commercially?
It's available, sir. If you actually Google remix powder and you go to our website, it's called dailydump.org.
Okay.
You can actually see it there. But if you Google remix powder, also you will find the link to that in Google itself.
Okay.
But it is available. It's available online. It's available in our store also.
Mhm.
And even other brands, you can find different kinds of remix powder being sold on Amazon as well.
Basically, what it consists like?
So it contains cocoa peat, and it also contains. It depends on the brand actually that's making it. What we do is we put some old compost and some microbial culture powder in it, and we mix it with lots of 97% is just cocoa peat.
Just add that to the existing kitchen waste.
Just adding that to the existing kitchen. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
No
So
problem.
I will try to invite you to guide our students. Basically, I'm also from engineering college.
Okay.
So maybe we do like an induction program in the beginning of the semester.
Sure.
So if you accept, we will invite you for that.
No, absolutely, sir. We're more than happy to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. What I can probably also do is show some more pictures of how the system works. can you see this presentation as well, sir?
Yes, sir.
So, because sir was asking about the powder and how the thing works, so this is actually a larger system we install in housing society. Since we're talking of apartments, it's called Agas. And then you have these two powders. This is the remix powder, and there is a microbial culture separately. And you have obviously the other equipment that you need to compost. But this is the main product. And this is about 1 meter by 1 meter. And there is a door in the front to remove the compost. And it basically takes in air from the bottom and it makes sure the air circulation is sufficient for the composting process. So I'll just quickly run you through the pictures in 5 minutes as well, where you are starting by putting some dried leaves at the bottom. Then you're covering it with that remix powder. Then the collection of waste happens from every door. You take the material to the agar, you add more remix powder in your waste to mix it up. Then you put it inside this agar number 1. And if you have 2 agas, you are using only 1, the other one is remaining empty. Then you add a microbial culture also. You can add it to some water and put it as well. And then you make layers basically. So you make a layer of waste, the microbial culture and some powder. And you keep doing that. During the process, there might be some amount of leachate, which is excess moisture, which is not absorbed during the activity. It's very good for your plants again. You can actually dilute it and you can put it into your plants. And as you keep doing this side door is only opened when your compost is finally ready. And how you know it is ready? So if you have 2 of these things sitting, you start with the first one. You keep putting your kitchen waste and remix powder, kitchen waste, remix powder, and fill it up in say 15 or 20 days. So if you were starting on say 1st of August, by 15th of August, your 1 agar should be full. Then you go to agar number 2. You start on say 16th August. By 31st, it should be completely full. Then in the first week of September, you can remove the compost like this from the door. And you can put it on a tarpaulin sheet and look at the quality of compost and see there should not be any plastic or anything mixed over there. And this is how you basically close the loop. You have your waste at your society. You're using something like a composter, like agar composter. You make the compost, goes to the garden. From there, you take it. From there, the compost, you can actually use it there. If you don't have use, people like us, we pick it up, we provide it to farms, and that's how the whole circle is completed. So this I just wanted to show quickly on how a larger sort of system works. But I want to encourage everybody that maybe just right after this session or whenever you get the time, you can go to YouTube and search for daily dump compost. You can type in, and you'll actually get very good videos on all of these different methods on how to find the best way to compost for your society. And you also find things about dry waste and electronic waste and other things, and how to deal with those as a society also. So that will be much more beneficial to look at as well. So now I feel we can open the if there are any more questions, please feel free to ask me. And if there are no questions, sir, I can share my email ID also, and if there's any, I'll put it in the chat. If there's anything, please feel free to reach out to us, and I'll be happy to answer.
Any participants who wish to ask your queries with the speaker? Anupama ma'am. Prakash Shetty. Dr. Rajkumara Hitchin. So there's a question in the chat box.
All right. So what is the temperature in composter during the process? Okay, so in that community composter, say I'll take an example of the day you start doing the process, of course it's at room temperature. As the composting process continues, the temperatures actually end up rising to up to even about 60, 65 degrees in a typical setup like that, because it's like a 1 meter height, it's like a hot pipe. And when it is at 65 degrees, the composting is happening very vigorously. And then after you fill that agar and you leave it, in the next few days, the temperature starts to drop because things are completely decomposing and the process is coming towards the end. By the time you remove the compost, technically speaking, the temperature should be back to close to room temperature. That's an indication that most of the things have decomposed. If you find the temperature is around 50 degrees and your 30 days have passed, that means something is wrong. That means maybe some things are still left to decompose inside, and you might need to stir the pile and maybe add more powder and keep it.
Any other questions? Sir, I have one question. You spoke about compost, that is what to do with organic waste. Now coming to e-waste.
Yeah.
How can we manage it?
So from a society point of view, sir, like I was saying, there's a e-parisara, for example, in Bangalore where the waste goes. So maybe the best thing to do is reaching out to an NGO so there are lots of NGOs that work around with e-waste as well. So maybe reaching out to the right organization that takes that electronic waste to the center, and then because there are people who are certified to kind of disintegrate your electronic equipment over there. That's the best thing to do. It might cost a little more in terms of the pickup cost of electronic waste, but we feel the electronic waste can only be picked up once a month or even once in 2 months. So that shouldn't really be a problem.
But that applies to housing societies and apartments, no, sir? What about individual houses? How can we manage?
Individual houses, actually, there's an organization called Sahas. They're actually they worked a lot to create these e-waste drop-off points also in various areas. They're called Sahas again. I'll repeat the name. So you could actually go to the website and found out the closest one also. They had built some around some retail stores and all that. It's completely free of cost to go and put it there. In fact, our office here in Indranagar is an e-waste collection spot, and we send it through them to the center also. And even your local waste pickups, right? The ones that happen through the municipality, they are also supposed to collect that kind of waste and take it. But because of infrastructure problems or the difference in the service provided in lots of areas, that becomes difficult. But maybe reaching out to an NGO like Sahas and figuring out which is the closest spot to kind of drop off the material would be the best way to deal with it.
So you talked about organic waste converting into fertile manure.
Yeah.
With respect to organic waste by composting.
Yes.
Then reusing the plastic waste.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or any other materials. Then how to actually reuse waste?
Okay. So that depends on what kind of waste you produce. Simple things are, if you ordered something from, which is a very common thing now, people order even the smallest of things online. It comes in some kind of packaging. So next time you have to send something somewhere, you can use that packaging again for doing that. If you have a tomato ketchup, for example, I'm just giving a random example. Once you complete the ketchup, you actually nicely wash that bottle, and it's basically a glass bottle. It could be used again for, say, putting water, or you can put in basically anything and use it in your fridge as well. So reusing, if you look at any material that you have produced as waste, is just for us to consciously look at those and say, what is it that this can add value to me? And if not, there are people who are running businesses now that encourage reuse. There are companies that make stuff out of wasted material, things could actually be just donated to them, those kind of places also. So
Sir, I'm asking about electronic waste, e-waste.
for the e-waste specifically.
Yeah, e-waste.
No, that's a tough one. So if your laptop has given away, then I don't think you can, like as an individual, say if you don't have the time to sort of reuse an electronic equipment, in that case, giving it out to the correct center is the better option to do. Reusing, I feel, as on a larger scale, would more apply to things like dry waste and very commonly recyclable items made out of plastic or paper, cardboard, those kind of materials.
One more question, sir.
Yeah.
Do you propose a solution for decreasing the landfill, the amount of landfill, the waste in the landfill?
Yeah. So no. So the things that we spoke about, if those are encouraged, which is at-home segregation, at the community composting, recycling at a ward level, if recycling, reusing, or reducing at the ward level itself, then you're completely reducing the amount of pressure that you have on landfills. But all these things need to come together and work efficiently so that the amount of waste you're sending out to the landfill is completely bare minimum. It's only the very tiny amount of reject waste that goes to a landfill. Unfortunately, still now in Indian cities, in most of our cities, the waste is mixed and it ends up in landfills altogether. And thousands of tons of it goes into a landfill every day. Hence, our landfills get filled up too soon, and the pressure on that is pretty high. And we've seen historically also the problems that can create in a city like, say, Bangalore, where landfills lead to groundwater pollution and a problem for communities that live close to those areas as well.
How to reuse or utilize toxic waste?
Toxic waste, you can't reuse.
Yeah.
Because if something is toxic and you kind of
So for
already...
example, we have bought a medicine and it's the date is bad.
Yeah.
So how to use it or dispose it?
For that also, there are people who do the pickups, and in fact, there are organizations that do it for both reject waste as well as your biomedical waste and medicines and anything with harmful, possibly harmful content. But it's just about finding the right, sort of vendor for doing that. There's one, for example, there's one called Maridi Eco, which is a company that does pickups, and they do it for a lot of apartment complexes in Bangalore, is what I believe.
So there are a couple of more questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I can see one. So there's one about daily mixing. Daily mixing is not required in a composting this thing. Now things have become easier. If you use that remix powder, just layering it over your waste is sufficient. But mixing once a week would be good to keep your compost breathing and making sure the process is right. In a community level composting solution which is bigger, mixing more often can actually help. But mix it before putting it in. So take some powder, mix it in the waste, and then put it in this thing, because it might be difficult to mix it in the pile. But for home composting, daily is not required. And then I can see one more question: if at all we use plastic bags for waste collection as per norms, what is the minimum thickness of the bag required? So I feel plastic bags should be discouraged altogether. And it's something that creates more nuisance in the larger scheme of things when things go out. Of course, you can find different sort of micron levels of plastic which might be useful and all that. But at a community level, and right now it's completely banned to use plastic bags for collection of wet waste, no matter what kind of plastic they are. And in fact, you'll also find these compostable sort of plastics being sold in the market as well, which say that if you put your food waste in that, they are itself compostable. But what we need to remember is that even a bag like that is compostable only in an industrial facility. You can't really compost it at home in a small duration of time as you are composting your rest amount of waste. So my personal opinion is that for the plastics for collection of waste should be completely discouraged and removed from our communities altogether.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
This is Prashant from Mangalore.
Yes.
Sir,
yes.
how much will this remix powder cost, sir? 1 kg of remix powder?
So approximately it costs about 38 rupees.
Okay, so for a month, how much kg of remix powder would be required?
About 2 to 3 kilos for a family. I'm saying so say about 100 rupees for a family approximately.
Okay, sir. Okay. So the final compost, we would get the final compost after how many days?
After a period of about 30 to 35 days is the first batch of compost that you get.
Okay.
And if you keep it longer, it's better actually. If you keep it for 45 days, 60 days, the compost quality keeps on getting better with time. So that will be even better too. So it's like,
Sir,
yeah.
But the feed is continuous now, sir. Every day we feed, right?
Yes.
If the feed is continuous, then will the quality be good?
The quality will be good. I'll give you an example of those agar bins that I showed, the large ones. So on the first day when you're putting the waste, like I was saying, it's at room temperature, but it keeps filling. And by the time you put it on the 15th day, there's lots of bacterial culture already inside. The temperature is high. So whatever you're putting later is actually getting decomposed much faster. And then you're keeping it for a resting period of 15-20 days. And by the time it is ready. So even though the feed is continuous, the whole thing becomes compost by that time.
Then we need mixing, no? So we need to mix it continuously, I guess.
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah. So with something like the remix powder, because it's completely moistureless, very fine powder, layering it is also sufficient. Although for the society level waste, we recommend some amount of mixing before putting it into the bin itself. If you can look for a community composting video, it will be there on our YouTube channel also. There you will get it step by step on how the whole thing is done.
Okay, sir. So, what would be the capacity, sir, of AGA 1? That how much is the capacity of that? How much waste we can feed? Total waste?
It's about 550 liters, the capacity.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Any other participants who wants to ask queries?
Sir, I have a question here. Sir, I have a question here. Am I audible, sir? Hello?
You're breaking up a little bit, ma'am. I don't know if that's only for me.
Hello? Am I audible here, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe my network is.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So when we actually put this all the wet waste, in that also do we need to have any segregation of citric items, or I can add anything as you mentioned earlier in your presentation?
On a large scale, ma'am, because we're talking about home composting and community level.
I'm talking about home composting only, sir.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of citric waste or tamarind waste or like tomatoes, oranges, lemons. All this also, can I add it to my home composting, or do I need to segregate them? That is where my question, because that actually matters for pH level and composting process, right?
Yeah. No,
so with this method, what you have explained, can I go ahead and add all these things?
Yes, ma'am, you can add. Because
no issues.
No issues at all. If it varies the pH level, also it'll be very little. And at home, we feel the citrus waste is a small part of your overall waste that you are producing, because you'll also have, I'm assuming, vegetable peels, and you'll also be putting a good enough amount of remix powder and cocoa peat. So it usually is absolutely fine in homes as well as communities, even if you put the citrus waste that you are generating.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other participants? I guess no. Okay, sir. On behalf of Department of Mechanical Engineering, MSRAT, I profusely thank Mr. Amarpreet Singh for spending his precious time with us and giving us an insight on this waste management, systematic waste management for apartment complexes and housing societies. We thank you, sir, once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
And love to do it again.
Okay, sir. I would like to call you for future events also.
Sure.